Hello everyone, my name is Oindrila and this is my video blog series where I share my musings and life as a full-time PhD student. Today is a Friday and usually every other Friday I try to send updates from my experiments in the 2 weeks before this to my advisor, and today I think I want to send some of the results I have from the modeling experiments that I'm doing. But before I do any of that, I usually like to sit down with a fresh mind and write down all the things that I want to, plan everything that I want to get done today. I have been modeling the diffusive uptake of polychlorinated biphenyls or PCBs into a polyethylene passive sampler. Now, what a passive sampler is and what my experiment is about, you can find in episode 1 of my PhD series. So go back and look at that if you want to know about that. Earlier in the week, in our Monday update meeting, I showed the results to my advisor, and I think there are certain scenarios that we want to look at specifically, so I'm going to run those scenarios today and send those results to him. That's agenda number 1 for today. The second agenda of the day is to finish the integration of the chromatograms of a sample that I ran earlier in the week. The gas chromatographic mass spectroscopic equipment that we have in our lab and the PCB method on it is rather new. So we are still trying to figure out the easiest way to identify those peaks, which is corresponding to each of the PCB containers. And I'm going to try and figure out all the peaks in my sample. So gardening is a very new hobby that I have developed. I currently have in my pots new saplings of pumpkin and jalapeno pepper that I grew from seeds. I'll show you my saplings. So this is the jalapeno pepper and this is the pumpkin. I'm also drying some seeds for green chili pepper that I wish to put in the pot once they have around 12% moisture. Back in India, I have always seen my parents grow all the vegetables and herbs that we need for our everyday cooking in the kitchen garden, like lemons, green chilies, eggplants, coriander, mint. So I think spending some time taking care of these plants makes me feel closer to home. And also it's so convenient to have some of these fresh vegetables so readily available, like right outside your kitchen. Okay, so the modeling results are sent. I'm going to rest a little right now because my eyes are very sore. I should exercise, but I think I don't feel like it today, so I'm going to skip exercise today. I'm too tired. It's okay. Um, so I have worked on this thing for about 3 hours now, and I'm trying to identify the peaks. But I think on the Agilent Mass Hunter interface, it is quite difficult to understand all the peaks because the peak labels vanish the moment I shift from one compound to another. And so I tried something. I tried to take pictures of all the time segments on my iPad and tried to label the peaks on the iPad so that I don't identify the same peak as two different congeners. You know what I mean? Okay, anyway, I'm still having a lot of difficulty in understanding them. And I'm not very confident about this. So while I work on this, I think I'm going to do another bulk sediment extraction. Basically rerun my sample on the ECD, which is a simpler, I wouldn't say simpler, but it's the method for PCBs on the ECD is better established. So I'm just going to run my sample on that and get the estimations quickly, because that's going to make my work and life a little simpler and easier. Even though the modeling work is not very straightforward, one of the reasons I like doing it is because it is very self-paced. And what I mean by that is I can work on it as and when I like, as and when I want to, and it doesn't have a rate limiting step, basically because I don't have to wait for something to happen to do the next step. But for my lab experiment work, that is not the case. I have to wait a certain amount of time for something to happen, and only then I can do the next step. As I was explaining in my previous blog episode, passive samplers try and reach equilibrium within a period of time. Sometimes what happens is that amount of time which we deploy these passive samplers for is not enough for them to reach equilibrium. So what we do is we preload these passive samplers with a known concentration of PCBs which do not exist in the environment. For example, say C13 PCBs, which are artificially made and they do not exist in the environment. And these PCBs that are loaded on the sampler are called performance reference compounds, or PRCs. We try and keep a track of the rate of loss of these PRCs when we deploy the samplers. And the mirror image of the loss of PRCs is essentially the equilibrium concentration that a particular PCB analyte should reach. But in actual scenario, maybe the PCB analytes haven't reached that concentration yet. So the difference between the actual and the mirrored PRC loss is what gives us the correction term, and we use that correction term to calculate the actual equilibrium concentration of the PCB analyte in the environment. Basically, the PRC loading on the passive samplers is a very crucial step. When we load a batch of samplers in a bottle with these PRCs at a decided concentration, we want all the samplers in that jar to be loaded uniformly or homogeneously. But I have been trying, and I have not been getting a very homogeneous loading of these samplers. And the loading of the samplers takes, if you are loading from just water, it takes about a month to load. Every time the loading is homogeneous, which I realize only after loading it for a month, and I see that it's not working, I have to go back and reload it. So there is a delay of 1 month. I'm back to square one and I have to go back and reload, which is again another month. So it's been going on like that for almost 5 to 6 months now. The C13 PRCs are very expensive, and we don't want to waste any of it. There are a couple of ways to load C13 PRCs into passive samplers. One of the cheaper ways is to load from water, just water. The other option, which is not a very cheap option, is to load from methanol water mix. So I think even though it's not cheap, it's going to help me achieve a more homogeneous distribution of these PRCs on the samplers that I'm loading. So right now I am doing this batch of loading from methanol water, and I hope it is better this time. The results I think I can take out and analyze the samplers in the coming week, and I cannot wait to go and see how the loading is this time. So I've been stuck in the same step, which is a very preliminary step of doing all my future experiments for months now. The whole month when I'm waiting for that, I'm so anxious that what will it be this time? Is it going to fail again this time? And I think I have loaded about 4 to 5 batches now. Metaphorically, I've been stuck at home, not being able to go back to my home in India for since 20, I think the last time I went was in November 2019, and I haven't been able to go to India since then. So that and my experiment stuck at the same place since eternity, it seems now. But the positive side is, because these experiments haven't been done before, the protocol is not very well established. These experiments, all these different batches that I have loaded and failed, we can put them together and figure out a story around it to figure out better ways of loading PRCs into passive samplers. Hopefully that will help others in the future to do a better job and not lose so much time on just the very preliminary step of their work, like me. Aniruddha went for a walk, so he's back, and I'm going to just go and help him prepare dinner. So I was watching this movie called The Pledge the other day, where Jack Nicholson was frying a fish on his pan, and it was fish coated with breadcrumbs on it. So I really wanted to have that today. No exercise and fried fish, great going. Yeah, but I really need that today. Also, I have been working here all afternoon, and I'm very taken by this plant on my window. It has snuck up to my window and has been there for, I don't know, a couple of weeks now. But it's so calming to look at it when I'm working.